Hello and welcome. Great to have your company. One of my favourite singer-songwriters from the early 70s would have to be Sixto Rodriguez. Rodriguez's extraordinary life, famously captured in the Oscar-winning documentary Searching for Sugarman, remains one of music's most inspiring tales. From working on demolition sites in Detroit to unknowingly becoming a cult icon, Rodriguez's journey was simply amazing. Do you know the man and his music? Let me remind you. Rodriguez was born in Michigan. He only ever released 2 albums, Cold Fact and the second Coming From Reality. Both flopped commercially in the US, but later became soundtracks to anti-establishment movements, particularly in South Africa, where he became a superstar. There he was more celebrated than Bob Dylan and Elvis Presley. And the unbelievable thing about the story is that he never knew anything of this. He lived impoverished and only found out about his fame at the age of 56. The story then made global headlines and brought Rodriguez roaring back into the spotlight. But sadly, he passed away quite recently, so his daughter Sandra takes up the story for us.
I spent 60 years shoulder to shoulder with Rodriguez. And so those songs are also a soundtrack to my life and my very existence. So I'm like living those lyrics and living those stories just like the rest of the world. The boy-girl themes, the political oppression themes, all of that, those songs resonate with the times today, the times yesterday. Hopefully not all the times in the future. Hopefully things will get better.
Tell us a little bit about him. Give us a picture of who he was.
Well, his parents were both Mexican. He was very proud of his Mexican heritage. My uncle was a painter, so he came to paint the Ambassador Bridge. And my grandfather, they had 6 children, and my dad was born to be a musician. I mean, I say that was what he came here to do. He walked it, he talked it, he dressed it, he worked those songs, that was what he was put here to do.
He obviously grew up with all the stories of oppression and how difficult it had been for the Mexican immigrants to come to the US.
For all the people of color, we're all in the same type of boat. We are all people of color, much marginalized, much skilled and talented as we are, still not making equal pay or still workers' rights. Rodriguez raised me very political. I've campaigned with him. We have many relationships. Every day he set out to do something that probably scared him, something exciting, something world-changing, life-changing. And things are changed by people wild enough to believe they can be changed, and Rodriguez was wild enough to believe that the world can be changed for better.
Was he always so active politically?
Always, very much so. Even more when the times were very turbulent during civil rights with the United Migrant Workers and their plight. There were babies being born, with deformities because of the spraying and in the fields when people were out there, and it was just too much. And we boycotted and protested and stopped trains and supermarkets, to bring awareness to the conditions, and things changed.
As a result, when did he first realize that music was to be his life?
He said he's been chasing music since he's 15. His brother gave him a set of guitar strings, and he's like, these can change your life and you can make a lot of money with these. So it was a family guitar, and they all were trying to play it, and Rodriguez played it and learned it and mastered it and embraced it. Very cathartic music. It helps you to deal with the stresses of life. It's a release, like arts and humanities.
Yeah, he certainly made some incredible music, but it wasn't really heard very much in America at the time. Was he chasing success through his music, or was he making music really primarily for himself?
He was trying to get a product, as he would have said. And I know the answers to these because I was with him in all the interviews and all of the travels, and he was trying to get a product. So he always said everybody has value, but you need a service or a product. So that CD, when he said Bag It Man at the end of that song, he was talking about those songs, put them on a record, bag it, and let's take it to the world. And he's
And he
trying to
did.
do it to be a musician, to be the real deal, to not only call himself a musician, but to do what musicians do.
So the way he dressed, you're telling me, was part of the image that he created for himself.
Most definitely, most definitely. And it was his image. And he has that image since the beginning. I know his glasses. I have his hats, I have his glasses, his guitar, his boots, his magic coat. He wore it, cover Rolling Stone, everything. But he wasn't a materialistic person. He used his stuff, really used it.
What was magic about his coat?
Well, he called it the magic coat and he called it the money coat because he needed something special. Musicians usually have a magic coat of some sort. And this one was. And after he got the coat, he toured, he was on stage with the coat and he had money in his pocket. So he called it the money coat and sometimes he called it the magic coat.
And who did he model himself on? The songs, the music. Who did he aspire to be like? What musicians did he enjoy?
Wow, that's a tough question. He enjoyed listening a lot. We lived in Detroit, so we're surrounded by East Coast, West Coast, Canada, all of the airwaves, all of the music that was out and about. He liked people who played guitar. Anybody who played guitar, he would listen, he didn't listen to anybody in particular. He wasn't like into bands and this is my band and none of that. Everybody had an equal shot. He wasn't looking for a pretty voice, he said. So
And he
something
was,
else in the music he heard.
and he was self-taught on guitar.
Yes, very much self-taught, and he didn't speak the language of an A, an E, a G, like musicians like to say, what chord is it in, what note.
And Sandra, what was his writing process like? How did that look?
Oh, I wish I could show you. He had his little black book and you could add more pages. He carried it with him everywhere. He would panic if he couldn't find it. My songs, my songs. He kept it constantly on him in his hand. It's in some of those pictures. And he would just write lyrics, stop what he was doing, write more, scribble it out, write again, write. And we pretty much kept every shred of everything he's touched for the last 50 years.
So, in terms of the writing, he would just jot down stuff as he was going through everyday life when something inspired him? Or would he
He
sit down
definitely
and make
would.
time to actually physically write a song?
He would phrases. He was very much into phrasing, coining a phrase, the way he phrased words. I'm sure that he had, well, when I clean his house, he's got like a dozen thesauruses. So I'm sure he would go through alternative words to use. He wanted to master the English language. Though he was from two Mexican parents and he spoke Spanish, he never spoke with an accent. He never embraced those stereotypes of what Mexicans or quote unquote should be. He was an American male. He wanted to master the English language.
A Most Disgusting Song is really a very unconventional one. It's a playful, tongue-in-cheek exercise in linguistic gymnastics. Rodriguez strings together words that tumble into each other, and it's all deliberate. On the surface, it feels silly, like a throwaway sketch, but Rodriguez always had a razor-sharp edge. The song shows the craftsman, the guy who wanted to conquer English, but also to twist it, mock it, and make it dance. And while Rodriguez played with language and constructed songs, he continued to work menial jobs, just trying to make ends meet.
He did. He worked himself just as hard as anybody could work till he collapsed. He would keep going 16, 18-hour days. And I think the reason behind that was because it helped him sleep. And I know the reason behind it was he would tell me, Sandra, a busy bee knows no sorrow. So he's had a lot of sorrow, but we stay busy. It keeps us from pining on it. So busy bee knows no sorrow. And yeah,
Well,
he had many wise phrases.
did he? Are there any
All
others?
day. I quote him all day. I'm like, Rodriguez would say, it just, at least a dozen times a day. I would say Rodriguez would say, remember to breathe in and out, or what, all day he was just full of this wisdom.
At the end of the 60s, the name Rodriguez was doing the rounds in Detroit's small music bars. Not very much was known about the singer, except that he could sing blues melodies with his incredibly charismatic voice. During his performances, he had a habit of turning his back on the audience, but it didn't take long before he was snatched up by a record label.
They found him. I believe that it works like there are like talent scouts out there. Dennis Coffey, who's a studio musician for Motown, recognized that in Rodriguez and took it to the hires up at Sussex Records and Buddha Records, and he got a contract. In fact, the executive to that, he said, I'm going to start my label with you, Rodriguez. So not only did he get a record contract, he was going to start the whole new label Success with Rodriguez, Sussex Records. So I don't know where the money fell off, and we don't talk about that a lot. And we just, Rodriguez said, we'll make new money. And I say, what's meant for you won't miss you. And we'll get the money some point. And he got some, he made success. He's a success, he gets some of his royalties, very, very, very low percentage. But maybe my sisters and I will renegotiate that.
How thrilled was he at the time to get a record deal?
It was a really good year for him. It was very hard times. And when he got the record deal, he was over the moon. That's what he wanted, and that's what musicians want. They want a record deal. They want somebody to help them. He didn't see the success from that, but he's seen it from the documentary, so.
Yeah, that came much later, didn't it? That very first album that he produced, Cold Fact, that was the one that brought him to everybody's attention. Walk us through some of your favorite tunes from Cold Fact. What can you tell us?
I like I'll Slip Away. I like I'll Slip Away. I sing Admitted a lot. I Think of You. It's so beautiful.
Who did he write that about?
My mom likes to say it was, my mom likes to claim that. So they were married then, and she likes to claim it, but I don't know who a lot of them are about. I'll leave that just to, it's about every woman, every man who think of each other. You're the first thought when I wake up, last thought when I go to sleep. That's who it's about, no one in particular.
And what about Sugarman, Sandra? Tell us what you know about that.
He said, is a descriptive song and not a prescriptive song, that it's describing people find the relief in different ways, all the vices that give us relief. So yeah, as far as sugar in our coffee, sugar in our cereal, sugar, or be it the other things. But my dad wasn't a drug user. He wasn't, he drank red wine and he smoked, but he didn't do any hard drugs.
Because when we first heard Sugarman, of course, we thought it was referencing drugs, but you're saying it wasn't.
It definitely was drugs. Sweet Mary Jane and jumpers would be probably speed. Coke would be probably Coke. It is, but it's about all the other things that we turn to bring the colors to our dreams, kind of thing, So.
Right. And of course, he was right in the midst of that whole environment at the time too, wasn't he?
Yes, Vietnam veterans were coming home. Many of them were getting addicted, cross-addicted. There was a lot of suffering, and people were turning to it. It was being dumped in the inner cities, and they were turning it to escape the pain and the mental torture that war creates for soldiers.
What happened after that record came out?
After that record came out, not a lot happened. Things got progressively harder. Things got progressively more racist, more police brutality, more discrimination. There was poverty. I won't glamorize poverty. So my dad continued to work. He worked at auto plants. He was a foreman. He did house renovation.
Was he disappointed that the record wasn't getting any airplay?
Sandy Kay, he would say he was too disappointed to be disappointed. And he prepared me for music by saying, be ready for disappointment, be ready for rejection, and be ready for criticism, because that is all part of what you will experience is in large degree being a musician. So, you would think you wouldn't want to do it, but you got to do it anyway.
He's
Sometimes you get the other, my dad had some victories.
Yes, he sure did. But he seems to have possessed such a wisdom. I mean, he hadn't lived the disappointment till that time, yet he somehow knew that that was part of the industry. He coined all of these phrases and wrote about the things around him in such a profound fashion that it was almost prophetic in a lot of ways, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. There are things that he said, all those years ago that are just spot on today. So what that tells me is as a human race, we need to make further advances. We shouldn't be caught up on the same issues that we can resolve. He was a big proponent of women being in politics, women changing the world, because we are creators. We are born to create. We're not here to destroy. We have answers. We have a different sensibilities. So he really encouraged women to be out there in the political arena.
He was a very humble man, wasn't he? He wasn't interested in any of life's trappings.
That is so true. He never went to malls or shopped or online. He just said you need food, shelter, and clothing. And anything above that is just like icing on the cake. He wasn't a spender. He had all that he needed. He didn't want you giving him any more stuff. He was very selective about any stuff, any belongings. He wasn't hoarding anything, like buying stuff.
And he lived very, very humbly too, didn't he, in the house?
Yeah, and I always use scripture because I am an ordained minister, and I just say a borrower is a slave to the lender. So he didn't want to be a slave, so he bought the worst house in the best neighborhood. He paid $100, and that kept him free to not have to have that house note, 1,500 a month. And he kept his utilities way low. I mean, he wanted $8 bill, he an $8 light bill, a $2, he didn't want to give the utilities his money. He would rather give it to somebody else. So he was very strategic and really determined to have a very light thumbprint, green thumbprint.
So Cold Fact is out. It's not selling in the US particularly well at all. What happens then that success does start to come to him?
Well, he kept trying to reinvent himself, and then he recorded the second album. He went to London, um, and he just kept trying. And once he put it out there, it was up to the universe to take it where it's going to go. You do your part, and then you just sit back and say, I did my best. And he said he did his best. So.
And he always believed that what he was due would come to him. You didn't have to push, you didn't have to try and control that if he was going to be successful and if he was going to make money out of it, that it would just find him. Was that his way of
Well,
thinking?
we independently were self-promoters. So we would go to the radio stations, we would go to the college radio stations, we would go to the newspapers, we would promote ourselves, we'd leave CDs, we would do shows, you sell where you play. So he would do shows in all the bars, all the festivals, all the ethnic festivals, and the parks, wherever, anywhere.
And was he
And
popular doing those?
um, no, no, he just would play and people would like him, but there was nobody like buying tickets, or they would come to the bar and like him and listen to him. But there's a lot of musicians who do that, and that, it doesn't pay their bills.
Right.
But he did say he made like $50 a night, and that was really good money, and he was really pleased with that. So he probably couldn't do it enough. He was getting to do what he loved. So yes, they paid him.
The second album was Coming from Reality in 71. Did he pay for his own trip to London to record that, or the record company had brought him across to record?
They paid for it, yes, and then
Right.
they probably gave him in advance, and
Did they promote him much?
Not as much. When you have a big label behind you, usually they distribute it for you, and somehow it made its way across the ocean, but I don't think it was from, the Sussex, because from what I hear is they went bankrupt and all of this other stuff. So the music industry has always been a little bit gray areas of how you actually make money. But there's a lot of money to be made in music.
As much as he tried, and as humble a man as he was, I still don't understand how he wasn't disappointed in his what appeared to be failings at that time.
He was very disappointed. He was sad a lot. I was kind of like his cheerleaders, pep squad. I wouldn't let anybody berate him or try to get him down. I would stick up for him, but he did. He was very sensitive, but at the same time, his pride would just not let him stop. He would just hold his head higher, and you're like, I guess we got to work harder. I guess, quitting isn't an option for any of us. So especially for Rodriguez, he's a very determined individual.
Why wasn't quitting an option?
Because he would make change himself. If there was a blighted out building, an eyesore, he would just get out there and clean the whole lot, make it look like a park. So he visibly, physically, he seen change, and he preferred it to be clean. So he knew how to fix things.
Wow.
We can solve it.
So it was still some time, wasn't it, before he actually realized some success? Tell us about how that came to be.
My story is different than the documentary. I told them the first thing that we noticed was Australia. He was on the charts in 1979. He was on the Billboard charts. He would read Billboard magazine, which is like the Bible of the industry, that Polestar. And so he's seen his name on the charts. We've seen it ourselves. He's looking Australian charts, Rodriguez, number 11, Cold Fact.
So you're saying to me that Australia broke him, that he had hit the Australian charts with Cold Fact before it got to South Africa?
And I said this, but when they were doing the documentary, they said we're focusing on South Africa. But I'm always the one saying what really happened, because I was there.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I certainly want to set the record straight.
Yeah.
So you're saying it was 1979 that he was on the charts, despite the fact that that album was made in 1970. That's quite a long period of time. So somebody has obviously bought copies of that album here, and word spread like wildfire here about Rodriguez, and we couldn't get enough of him. It was on our turntables all the time. How did he feel about that when he first saw that he'd made the charts in Australia?
We didn't know it was as big as you're telling me. Even to this day, it gives me chills to hear you say that, because that's what we were looking for. That's what we were trying to achieve. And here it was happening without us knowing it. And then when we found out, things started happening, and we did 13 cities in Australia. They gave him gold and platinum albums when we were there on the ship, the Endeavour, one of the first ships. It's a real famous Australian ship. But Rodriguez has been there 6 times.
What do you think it was about Rodriguez's music that appealed so strongly to an Australian audience?
Well, after having been to Australia, which Rodriguez had been around the world, he said Australia should be the capital of the world. And I believe it is because they are freer thinkers. They're not like indoctrinated, like here in America, they tell you what to drink, what to listen to, what to think, what to do, where in Australia, you might just be able to listen to the birds sing or something and the music. But here, the bigger names are going to sell more. Simon and Garfunkel, the ones they're pushing. Yeah. It was too political. It might have got people riled up and started a revolution. I don't know.
At that time, at the late 70s, his albums really did start to gain significant airplay, both here in Australia and in Africa, in Botswana, in New Zealand, in Zimbabwe, and in South Africa. According to the documentary, people had smuggled copies of the album across to South Africa, and Africa just went crazy about him, didn't they?
Yes. And maybe it was saying all the things they wanted to say and were either too afraid to say, couldn't say, but they could sing it. So yes, it's like singing, we're not gonna take it, like one of those anthems,
He wasn't speaking directly about apartheid. He was speaking about the troubles that he'd grown up with and seen in his
Right.
own domain, but they
Right.
adopted all of that as their own.
We're all going through the same thing in different parts of the world in different levels and degrees of oppression and injustice and inequality. So it's no secret. Now that we have the internet, it's all out there. Everybody can see what's happening. So it's going to help. It's going to help put an end to some of the nonsense.
When he did become incredibly popular in South Africa, they compared him to artists like Bob Dylan and Cat Stevens. How did he feel about that?
Well, he would say Dylan wrote 20 albums and he said I had one album. So he would always give credit to Dylan. There's like, my dad loved Dylan. He tried to see him before, had box set. And music shouldn't be a competition either. It should just be, hey, you're great. I'm great. She's great. We're all rock and roll queens and kings.
But there were rumours around, as you said earlier, that his life had ended. He was particularly elusive. People here, I remember, tried to get hold of him at the time and could never find him. And there were rumours that abounded that he'd actually tried to kill himself.
Yeah,
How
that
come?
would have. Rodriguez, we're not really sure, but he would say maybe somebody just say he burned out and they turned that around. We have no idea. My own personal one is, hey, if he's dead, they don't have to pay him. Like,
Did they pay him or they didn't pay him what he was due?
and they didn't pay him. We grew up in yeah. He should have been paid, but like I said, he had later on and down in life. So
Wow.
everything in the right time, in the right season. But yeah, there's some bookkeeping that was off, so he couldn't waste time crying about it. He didn't, he said, you don't want me weak. So he just continued to be strong.
And did he eventually see the fruits of his labour while he was still alive?
Yes, yes. And just those crowds, 6,000 people came to Barclays. That was the first show back in 2013. And even when they showed up in Australia, but I don't know what happened after, why it didn't just continue. So 79 and then nothing again till 98. That's the difficult part is we had that one success and then nothing again till 98. He made
Did,
enough to get comfortable for a minute and pay his student loans and pay our tuition and then nothing, no more tours, no more whatever. I just don't know what happened.
did he continue writing songs in the interim?
Yes, yes. And then he had songs that he had written previously when he wrote those others that he just hadn't recorded or that we're still working on.
There was something very special about that first album, and I guess he was never able to recreate that iconic sound or the reason that touched so many people all over the world. And for an artist, that would be really difficult. I guess he would have
Right.
experienced that too.
Right. And that's why he chose not to do anything. They offered him a feature film about his life to have a mini series, but he's like, it's already been done with the documentary. It was done in such a way that it's won 40 awards. He's like, why mess with something that's already great? We've done it. That's what he said. I said, why, Dad? Why? I want to do it. Let's do it. Because it's already been done, he said. So he leaves me a lot to think about.
Yeah, 40 awards that documentary won, including an Academy.
Academy, yes, Oscar.
Is it true that in announcing that award, he didn't even own a television set on which to watch the show?
Very true. He doesn't own any of those kind of things. Yes, no.
And how did he feel about being honoured so?
Well, he would give credit where credit is due. When we went on that Thursday and we screened the documentary at Sundance Film Festival, Sony Classic Pictures was there. They purchased the film and distributed it to 58 countries. Now, had they distributed to 58 countries when he did Cold Fact, he would have been a massive hit. But Sony is the reason why Rodriguez surfaced in my opinion, besides Malik making the documentary and putting the South African story, they are
responsible for it. He must have been surprised that there was even such an interest in his story. I can imagine the man that he was wouldn't have thought very much about his own story or his own music particularly, did he?
Not at all. He was not interested in doing any bio topics, any telling anything much about himself. He's just an ordinary legend, he said. Nothing personal. He was never into telling any personal thing. Keep his mystery alive.
He liked to keep himself a bit of a mystery.
Certainly, yes, he was good at that.
Why?
Very stoic. He didn't like people coming to his house. As long as he's in the public, then he's public. But when he was in his private, and he even said no to the documentary over and over again because they came to his house like, don't come. And then they came in February when it's super cold here, and he said, okay, all right, I'll do it.
He gave in.
He gave in because they were so, persistent, and they came here.
Right. And of course, there have been several films about him done since the documentary.
One of the big ones we did was 60 Minutes, and then the Letterman.
His health started suffering in about 2010, 2013, something like that. He started to suffer from glaucoma, didn't he?
Yeah, he had glaucoma for a number of years. And he was fortunate because he did get an operation that many people don't get with the flaps to release the pressure. So he kept his vision for a little longer than most, but it did take his vision. And he also kept that very private. I feel like I'm spilling all his secrets. He kept that very private. He didn't want people to know. He thought it would make him more vulnerable. So he didn't let people know he couldn't see. We would help him on stage, put his hand on the mic, and then he was on his own.
Did he feel sorry for himself?
He never expressed that he felt sorry for himself, but for me, it was the most gut-wrenching thing.
He kept writing songs too, didn't he? In total, he only actually completed about 30 songs.
That sounds about right. We were going to go to Palm Springs after we did the tour. We were going to go into the studio, and it didn't happen. They weren't ready for us. And my dad was so extremely disappointed, and I had never seen that before. It took the wind out of him because he was ready and he knew it was now or never, and it ended up being never because it didn't happen then.
He suffered a stroke in 2023, didn't he, and died as a result?
Yep, a culmination of anything. He did 250 shows or more. We thought he was coming back from it. It got worse instead of better. But yes, he had his limelight 2013, 2014, 15. People start to know him, and we sold the big shows.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Wonderful to learn more about his story and his music from the person closest to him.
Thank you, Sandy.